All right, so we'll get started.
Okay.
What's going on, guys? Dr. Matt here, host of the Roadie Strength Podcast. We got another special guest on today, Kate Hughes. What's going on?
What's up?
What's up? So she is a nutrition coach, owner of the WellFed project, where she helps women reject diet culture and reach their goals through healthy habits, through simple, sustainable, holistic nutrition and coaching tailored to you. So really happy to have you on, and thank you. Welcome to Bullfrog, the podcast studio we have down here in the PT office.
Yeah, super excited to be here.
So just to get started, we'll do some of the rapid fire questions. So these are mostly for me because I feel like they're very interesting, but I think my listeners like them too. But just starting off, we got favorite coffee shop, and usually something like local, like Rhode Island based.
Yeah. So I'll probably say Coffee Depot in Warren.
Okay.
I like the vibe in there.
That's a repeat choice for sure. Yeah.
I like it. I'll go work from there sometimes, like bring my
Okay.
laptop, and I like the ambient noise and I can focus and
Nice.
Yeah, good vibes.
I haven't actually checked that one out yet, so that's gonna be on my list.
Yeah.
Now that I've heard it a couple times, I'm like, all right, gotta check out the Coffee Depot. Next question, similar. We got favorite go-to breakfast.
Go-to breakfast. All right. So if I'm making breakfast at home, I'm going to go with some sort of egg scramble. So I always tell people I feel like I'm crushing life when I can incorporate some vegetables in my breakfast, right? So I'll often mix like eggs and egg whites with whatever, broccoli, whatever I have on hand. Spinach, tomato, feta is another favorite.
Nice.
Slice of Ezekiel toast. Call it a day. Yeah.
Nice. All right.
Yeah.
I haven't had Ezekiel in a while. That brings me back.
Yeah.
I like that.
The sesame.
Yeah.
Ezekiel.
That's really good. I've been big on Dave's Killer Bread recently.
Yes,
I've
I
been
like
a big
Dave's
fan.
too. Mm-hmm.
Cool. I like that. Favorite recent book that you've read, or just in general?
Oh, goodness. This one's a tough one. I love to read. I don't have a ton of time to read. So I haven't read this yet, but I'm going to say this as my answer anyway. So I just got The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron in the mail from Amazon this past week. So are you familiar with it?
No, I'm not. I haven't heard it.
So I don't know much about it, but it's been recommended to me by a few different people. And one person in particular said it changed her entire life.
Wow.
Changed her life, changed her business, changed her relationships. Like, it was a very powerful experience. And so
That's cool.
My understanding of the book is it kind of takes you through some exercises that help you kind of tap into your creativity.
Totally.
And I think a lot of it she has this thing called morning pages. I assume it's some sort of journal exercise each morning that is, I think, kind of the mechanism to tap into it. So
I like that
very
a lot.
intrigued, and I've read like 2 pages of it, so I'm excited to dive in. But
is it the title "The Artist's Way"? Is she an artist? Is that why they?
I honestly don't
know. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, you just started.
I don't know if she's like if she's a writer, if that's her craft, or if she's a painter. Like, I don't know anything about her yet.
That's really cool.
I'll report back.
I'm a big book reader too. Well, listener. I read with my ears, as they say.
So I have a question for you about that. So, do you consider that reading?
That's a great question. I'm part of a book club, and which at Crossfit Providence, which I've told this is kind of the way I talk about it is. It's had no reason to be successful, but it's been wildly successful.
Okay.
So we started with like 2 people like a couple months ago, and now it's grown to like 20 people.
All right.
But so during our book club, we meet up, we go to a brewery, whatever, we talk about the book, and we go around one by one. And we always start with, do we read it with our eyes or our ears? And I'm an ears person.
I mean, that's a good way to put it. You read it with your ears.
Yes.
So it's acknowledging that it was an audiobook. I can get on board with that. I've had this debate with friends before.
Yeah.
Like that's not reading. Like, that's not sitting and reading the words on the page.
It's not. It's definitely, it's much different, but I'm still able to get, it depends on the book, but I'm still able to get a really good idea of the story, the plot. And especially, I think there are some audiobooks, especially when they're read by the author, and the author is a very good orator. I don't know, quick pronunciation of that word, but they speak well.
Yeah, sure.
And like one that comes to top of my mind was the David Goggins book.
Okay.
And the way he reads it, he also adds like extra snippets on top of the book, like, oh, and also this extra story is like, I think there are instances where it's super cool.
Yeah.
But for me, just because I drive a lot, it just makes sense.
Totally. I don't mean to knock it. I've
yeah.
actually never listened to a book. I've listened to podcasts, of course, but I've never listened to a book. So I don't know. There's something about holding a book in my hands and reading the page that I just love that. It's relaxing and So I don't know. I've just never had the appetite to do an Audible book. But
I like it. It's a good discussion because there are like differences.
I think it's a completely different experience, right? Because you have the auditory input to influence the tone and all of that. So.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It can kind of lead your creativity in one way or another, depending on how they're saying it.
Yeah, totally.
No, 100%. I like that. That's good.
I thought of another book. Can I?
Okay, yes.
One more book.
Absolutely.
Real quick? So I'm terrible at remembering details, but there's a book I read called Food Fix.
Okay.
Have you read that one?
No, I haven't.
So this is a fascinating book. I think it's Dr. Mark Hyman is the author, and it's essentially a study on everything related to food, and so farming, food, the food industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the government, like all of these factors are so intertwined, and how kind of fixing our food system would fix all of these other systems that exist. It's really powerful.
You know what? Actually, now that you're starting to talk about that, I think I may have heard of that. And I could be wrong on this, but I think the person who talked about that book might have been Rupert.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it might have been. It might have been. And I guess for the listeners, Rupert it made the introduction to Kate.
Yeah,
so that's how
I have not talked to Rupert about that book, but
I think it might have been him. Now that I'm thinking about it, but I think somebody else. If it wasn't him, somebody did mention that book in the past. So that's
that could be a good one. Put it on your list.
And that's kind of my rule. It's that I break often. But is if I hear the book twice, I'm like, all right, I have to read it.
Yeah,
so
that's a good rule.
I like that. And that leads us into our next question: favorite recent podcast or a podcast that you've liked in the past.
So I'm funny about podcasts. I'm not like a loyal listener of a certain podcast. I kind of just base it off of like someone will recommend an episode here and there. So I don't know if I have one that I, again, am a loyal listener, but I think
a lot of people are like that.
Yeah. I've been on a Mel Robbins kick lately though. So she has a really popular podcast, and she had an episode recently that was kind of focused on like her best advice for women in business, which I really appreciated. And she's just such a powerhouse, and she's got like just such a great way of thinking about things and approaching things. And
that's cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
I listened to another episode yesterday that she put out, and it was her like 17 or 18-year-old son.
Okay.
Like her listeners would write in questions to him, and it was so fun to listen to. He was like full of wisdom, and he's this young kid, and it was great. He took people through this like this exercise to help with anxiety, like this breathing exercise. Like it was very impressive.
Interesting. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
A similar question is favorite Instagram accounts, and the way to describe this is maybe something that you find entertaining or educational, or something that you just you like when it pops up, essentially.
Okay, not really related to fitness or nutrition, but this I would say my favorite account is this woman. It's called Big Time Adulting.
Okay.
So her name's Caitlin. She's a mom. She's like lives somewhere in the Northeast, and she just talks about parenthood. It's what everyone's thinking in their head, but they don't have the courage to say it out loud about all the challenges around it, right?
Fair.
And her delivery is fantastic. She's got like this just deadpan kind of dry way of talking about these things, and I literally laugh out loud at most of the things she puts out there on Instagram, and
that's great.
Yeah,
I like that. Next one, we got somewhere you've traveled recently. It could be work, for fun.
Yeah. So most recent travel was last month. I went on a little girls' weekend with a couple of my friends up to Vermont.
Cool.
And it was lovely.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it was so relaxing. We hiked. Nice. We ate some good food. We sat by a fire. It was awesome.
That's really cool.
Vermont's my happy place.
Was there snow up there?
There was a little snow.
Yeah,
so this was like early November, and they did have some snow.
Very cool.
It actually snowed a little bit while we were there, like the snow globe kind of snow, where it's just like
unreal.
flurries. Beautiful.
That's nice. Next one we get kind of switching back towards fitness a little bit, maybe. Some people throw some non-fitness answers to this, but favorite shoe or sneaker?
Oh, I've always mostly been a Nike girl.
Okay.
So like Metcons.
Yeah.
Yep.
Love it.
They're pretty versatile.
And they, as far as like the, I mean, CrossFit or like just gym training shoes.
Yeah.
They look cool.
They do. I agree.
They're cool looking shoes.
Yeah.
They have really good colorways, good patterns, everything. So I'm a big fan of the Metcons too. And then last rapid fire, which may not be super rapid, but what do you like doing right now for fitness or workouts?
Yeah. So this is an interesting question for me at this moment in time. Sure. So I was doing CrossFit style workouts for several years, and it was actually my second stint in doing CrossFit. So I did CrossFit in like my late 20s, got pregnant with twins, and decided to retire from CrossFit, if you will, at that time. And so I kind of transitioned my training to other things for several years, and then got back into it a few years back. And I love CrossFit so much, but I was just feeling a little burnt out, to be honest.
Totally, yeah.
I needed a little change of pace, so I stopped the end of the summer, basically. And so lately I've been just doing on my own, like strength training, and I always have yoga in the mix.
Nice.
Yeah, I do yoga. I would love to do yoga, like go to a yoga class twice a week. Doesn't always happen, but I aim for that.
Very cool.
And then for cardio, I play tennis a couple times a week. So and then jump on a Peloton ride here and there.
Are you probably not playing too much tennis right now, are you?
Indoor.
Oh, nice. Okay,
twice
cool.
a week I play. Yeah, before my workday starts, after the kids go to school.
That's awesome.
Squeeze it in, yeah.
Where are you going to? Is there any studio you're going for yoga? Or?
Yeah, I go to Synergy in Barrington.
Cool.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Awesome.
Alyssa is the owner. She's like my spirit guide. I don't think she knows that, but
great.
She's incredible.
That's cool. So I know just recently you were training over at Prowess.
Yeah.
For CrossFit. Where did you start there as well?
No, so the first time I did CrossFit, I was living in Massachusetts. So I went to Vagabond in Easton, Mass. And then, most recently I was at Prowess, which is such an awesome gym. Like the greatest people ever coach there and train there. So that was the hardest part of deciding I needed a break from it, was leaving the people. So yeah, I missed them all. But
which class did you go? Wait, were you a morning person?
I was at 5:30 a.m.
Were you?
Yes.
So you trained with Hudson Maynard?
Yep. Yeah.
I had him on the podcast a couple months ago now, maybe like 6 months, something like that. He's a beast.
He's an animal. He's so impressive.
Yeah.
I want to be like Hudson when I grow up.
Same. Very much
He's
so.
He's so disciplined and just like he's got a great attitude, you know?
Yeah. He's crushing it. And I'm sure you'd be happy, like he's dialed in from like a nutrition and everything standpoint.
Oh yeah, for
too,
sure.
So.
Yeah.
All right, so let's start to get into a little bit of your backstory, I guess, like how you got into nutrition, just in general, and then we'll kind of like feed that into like how you started up the business, like the WellFed project. So
so how I got into nutrition, so sort of just wellness in general has always been an interest of mine, and so my formal educational background is in psychology. I've a master's and a certificate of advanced graduate study in psych, so I have this like counseling background. And then over the years, my hobby, I guess you would say, was like reading books about nutrition and, studying it sort of on my own. And so more recently, I wanted to formalize that in some way and kind of transition that more into a career move for myself. So, actually through Prowess, I talked with Kristen there, who heads up the nutrition program, and, I got trained through Healthy Steps Nutrition, which is, do you know them?
No, I haven't.
They're a Florida-based company. They partner with mostly CrossFit gyms to help them implement their nutrition coaching programs. So I got some awesome training through them. And additionally, since then, I've gotten my precision nutrition certification as well. And so that's sort of my background in it.
Yeah.
But so I did some nutrition coaching through Prowess for about a year, and that was really fun. I think just to like take a step back and think about the bigger picture of why, I have a family history of heart disease and diabetes and those types of diseases. And so I think that's like really the core of what has interested me in this area. Like, you know, when I get to my real why is I think, you know, the way sort of American society is set up, it's not the best to prevent those types of diseases.
Totally.
And so I've always been a proponent of like, what can you do to prevent all of these kinds of things from happening? And of course, not all of them are totally preventable, but I think there are so many lifestyle factors that are within our control that can prevent some of those things. And so that's really the heart of it for me, is just like living a healthy lifestyle so that you can kind of be at your best as often as possible.
Totally.
Yeah.
No, that's really cool. And so it always makes me happy to hear like when somebody's journey comes from a place of like a deep why that's like super important like that. So like that's driving them forward, and that's also what's gonna make you successful too. At the end of the day, is like if those days that are hard, like okay, if you dig down, like okay, why am I doing this? Okay, yeah, it's basically like to make the world a better place for like cliche and you know, as much as it sounds like that's gonna keep pushing you forward. So no, that's really cool
for sure. Yeah, I definitely have a deep personal connection to it, and it's funny because I feel like my family is like so over listening to me preach about these things.
You're like, all right,
so I had
time to find some new audience.
Yeah, exactly. I had to share it with others. So here we are. That's
also from other, I mean, trainers, PTs, nutritionists, coaches. Those are sometimes the hardest people to reach. I don't know the science. I'm sure there's a reason behind it, but the hardest people to like take your advice is your family for whatever reason.
I think that's so true. Well, it's so true. I mean, I think about I have 8-year-old twin boys, and like even them, like hearing something from me, no. If they hear it from a friend, that's a different story, right? Like it's hearing it from someone that's a little bit removed from you, I think can be more powerful, which makes no sense.
Yes, yes, exactly. Like I've had people message me like, hey, my wife or my husband has this going on, and they may be in the medical field. Like I think this is what it is, but I think they need to hear it from someone else, like something like that. Like all right, yep, fair enough. Yep, that looks about right. But no, that's good. So let's dive a little bit into kind of like your business, how you're working with clients. So I guess from the start, like when somebody's working with you, when I think of nutrition, and I mean, tell me like if I'm way off base, but I'm thinking like, okay, I'm seeing a professional. They're giving me maybe like a meal list or some macros and like and figuring out what I need to eat like on a daily basis. But what does it look like, I guess, when a client is coming to work with you like one-on-one?
Yeah. So the answer to that is it really depends on the individual person. Like that's my short answer. But longer answer is, you know, I like to meet people kind of where they're at, right? And everyone's coming at this journey from a different place. And so we'll usually start with some like intake questions, right? So I can get an understanding of their baseline and kind of what their current habits and lifestyle looks like now. I want to get a really good understanding of their goals, right? Like some people, it's a really specific goal. Like it's like, I want to lose 15 pounds. And some people it's like, I want to gain muscle. I want to get stronger in the gym. Right. Some people are just like, I am just in this, you know, rut, and I need some help getting back to like some healthy habits, right? So really depends on the person where we go from there, right? So some people want to talk about macros and track their food and weigh their food and all of those good things, and that works great for some people, but I would say for most people that's too much, right? Yeah. And so oftentimes when I'm working with clients, it's much more about kind of getting back to the basics and the fundamentals of like, what should your plate look like most of the time if you can help it, right? And so filling half your plate with non-starchy veggies and a quarter protein and a quarter starch and a little bit of fat, right? Like oftentimes that's where we're starting because most people aren't eating that way on a regular basis, right? And so it really depends on the client. But then a big kind of cornerstone of the program is to keep things as simple as possible so that they are sustainable, right? Nice, and so we tend to work on one, maybe two specific behaviors at a time. And so that's the other piece I would mention is this is so much about behavior change versus like food. Like, yes, what you're eating matters, but when someone's seeking out coaching services around nutrition, it's often more about their behavior, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where I tap into my counseling background. I'm not offering formal counseling, right, as a licensed therapist or anything like that, but we are talking about changing your behaviors.
Yes.
And so thinking about, all right, what are you most motivated to work on? Like, let's get an early win. Right?
Yeah.
And it could be as simple as like hydration and like drinking enough water every day. And that's the goal. Like that is the focus for a week, 2 weeks until that person's feeling comfortable with that. And then we'll tackle the next thing. Right. And so my goal is I want to help people reach their goals, but I want them to do it in a way that they can see themselves doing it without me eventually. Right. Like I don't want them to feel like it's so overwhelming and it's not sustainable. And sure, you'll drop those 15 pounds you're trying to lose and then gain it right back. Because I mean, I've been there myself. I've done all the fad diets. And it's not sustainable, and that's why they don't work. And so that's sort of the philosophy of how I approach this is, keeping it simple and sustainable, focusing on behaviors and implementing those until they become true habits. Like it's routine. Like I walked in here with my emotional support water bottle.
Yes.
And I bring that everywhere. And that's like, it's like putting on my seatbelt or brushing my teeth. Like it's just, I don't even think about it. It's just always with me. Right.
Yeah.
Like so, ultimately that's how I want people to kind of approach their nutrition and, have it be just ingrained. Like this is how I live. This is how I approach life. Yeah.
I like that a lot, especially like you said, for like long-term change.
Mm-hmm.
One of my top books is Atomic Habits. Have you heard of that one? Have you read that one?
No.
You would love it.
Okay.
Definitely add that to your list.
All right.
If someone else mentions it, you got to read it.
Okay.
But
Perfect.
they talk a lot about like that. Like only add like. Don't throw too much at once, which is kind of like common sense type stuff.
Yeah.
Don't give someone too many behaviors to change at once because they won't do any of them. Like, just pick one, focus on it, crush it. Go to the next one, focus on it, crush it. Like, one at a time.
Yeah.
There was another example I was going to say, but I completely forgot what it was. But yeah, I really like that, that methodology for making behavior change.
Yeah.
And like you said, like having a psychology background has got to be so beneficial because that's exactly what it is. Behavior change. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, I know you know the science, you know the nutrition, but if you didn't have any like knowledge on like how to actually change someone's behavior, like it's kind of like that saying like you can lead a horse to water, but they don't drink it. It's like here's all the information, but someone might not listen. So it's super. That's awesome to have that.
Totally. Yeah, and I think that's there are lots of different types of nutrition programs out there, and I was talking to a friend the other day who is part of an online workout community that they offer a nutrition plan, but it's literally just a handbook and that's it. And so like are most people going to implement that? Probably not. Right. And so that's
nobody.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's where, working with a coach who can help you with, all right, how do I actually execute this in my real life when I have a full-time job and kids and a partner and all these other responsibilities, and like, how do I completely change the way I'm doing this now into this other thing that I just got this handbook on, right? And so I think breaking it down for people and kind of helping them approach it piece by piece is a key component of it.
And I think that's big. Like even with PT or like a lot of professions out there, like any information you could possibly want is on the internet.
Correct.
Anything. But part of the problem is that there's too much information where like, and there's bad information, so you don't know to sift through like what's good or bad. But like what you really need is someone like a coach to help you implement and actually do it and do the right stuff. But
totally.
So, I like that. That's really cool. All right. So next I want to get into, I have some questions that are based on, and actually, don't let me cut you off. As far as the client journey, let's bring it back. Let's recap that a little bit. So, someone comes to see you. Kind of, what does that look like from like a 20-foot like kind of scale? Like
So kind of again, one of the first things we'll do is an intake assessment just to kind of get a baseline of habits, behaviors, and this is not just food related either. So I want to understand a person's like movement. Are they exercising? Are they sleeping? Are they sleeping well? Are they sleeping enough? How stressed out are they, right? Like I like to approach it from a holistic perspective because they're all intertwined, right?
Yeah.
So, an intake, and then we'll work together on establishing kind of what the overarching goal is. I like to understand people's why, right? Like I talked to you a little bit about my why. Like I think that's an important part of this process too, is to allow people to understand how this connects to something deeper, right? That it's not just losing the 15 pounds. It's losing the 15 pounds because they don't feel like they have the energy to play with their kids on the floor and run around with them. And like it's connected to something arguably much more important, right, than what you look like and that sort of stuff. So connecting with the why, and then talking through how we're going to get there, right? Like what behaviors are we going to focus on? And so I try to take a very client-centered approach. So it's dependent on the person. We'll kind of establish that. And then I require a minimum of 12 weeks, 3 months to work with me because behavior change takes time. Yeah. And so we need at least that amount of time to kind of work toward these things. So over the course of those 3 months, we'll do check-ins. At least we'll do a virtual check-in once a week, and then we'll jump on a call together, usually every other week, just to see how things are going. We might need to tweak the plan a little bit. Life happens. I think it's helpful for people to be able to chat with me about the vacation they have coming up or the wedding or whatever they have going on that they know they're not going to be in their normal routine, and sort of navigating that, right? So I think those check-ins are helpful for those kinds of things too.
Totally.
And then they have access to me in between those weekly check-ins as well.
Right.
Of course, to answer questions or if they need a little pep talk or whatever, or to celebrate wins. I love to celebrate people's wins. So that's sort of what the journey looks like. The end of the journey is really dependent on the client and, if they're feeling ready to kind of do it on their own. If they're benefiting from the accountability, they'll often stay on longer. It kind of depends on when they're feeling ready to, fly the nest.
I like that. As far as PT, that's a common conversation we have too, is like, when is somebody ready for like discharge? When are they done? When I guess it's exactly like the goal for PT is like to eventually get them to be independent, not need us anymore. Right. We're trying to work ourselves out of a job essentially.
Exactly.
But at the same point, like if someone is like enjoying working with us, not that they need us, but they feel value in the service. Like we'll do maintenance work, we'll do tune-ups, we'll do something like intermittent like follow-up. So like I like that idea of like, hey, we're not trying to like lock you in forever, but we're here if you need us as a resource type of thing. That's really cool. All right, awesome. So let's move on. I got a couple questions as far as just because nutrition is such a crazy topic, especially nowadays. And there's so many different opinions out there. So I listed quite a few. We won't get to all of them, but we'll pick out some of the big ones. And I know you had I gave you a quick look at this beforehand, but any of these pop out as far as like organic, macros, certain like seeds that you like definitely like, hey, don't miss this. I really want to talk about it.
Oh, gosh. They're all so good.
Yeah. Okay.
How do you choose? I'm happy to touch on some of that.
Okay.
So I want people to approach nutrition from a place of not feeling overwhelmed, right? And also feeling like it's a sustainable plan that fits their real life. So am I going to encourage someone to eat a bunch of processed foods? No. But the reality is you're going to eat some processed foods, most likely, right? Like the average person you're going to want to eat some of those processed foods.
Right.
And so, we talk about prioritizing whole foods, of course, but, if you can achieve that 80% of the time, you're doing great, right? Like go enjoy that piece of cake or those chips or whatever you want. That so I don't want people to feel restricted in any particular way. And I think that's where like the fad diets fail people is they're often extremely restrictive in some way, shape, or form. And it's just not sustainable you may see some results, but you're not going to live like that long term, and in most cases. So I think that's a big piece of the conversation for me when I talk about like what's off the table for food. Like, really nothing. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And like you say, with the fad diets, like I don't know if they still use this term, but yo-yo dieting.
Oh yeah.
It's like you lose the weight, but then like the yo-yo comes right back. Yeah. Like once you stop the diet, it's like it's like if you're not really, which isn't really, I don't know if they changed any literature on this, but it's that good for your body.
I was gonna say it's not great for your metabolism.
Yeah,
like it wrecks you. Like, and that's the other thing, especially with women. I think they tend to think I have to restrict calories to a degree that's like just not healthy.
Insane.
And it does mess your metabolism
right
up. So
especially like I know in young like female athletes is a big problem, especially with the severe caloric restriction.
I want to touch on macros too,
hit it.
I can. So macros, that's this has been an interesting topic just in my personal life and conversations with friends who maybe aren't in the nutrition space. And, people may or may not know what macros even are, right? And so that's interesting as a nutrition coach to just kind of gauge where people are at. And again, sort of meeting the client where they are. I'm likely not going to start you out counting your macros.
Totally.
Right?
Totally, yeah.
But I am going to teach you about macros, right?
Sure.
Like we're going to talk about how you need the 3 major macros, right? You need the protein, you need the carbs, you need the fats for a healthy, balanced diet. And oftentimes, even just understanding that, like having those 3 macros in your diet in each given meal, in most cases, is a healthy, balanced way to eat, I think sometimes is new information for people.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that's definitely a topic that I cover with my clients. And we will get into, depending on what their goals are, there are ways that you can kind of keep an eye on your balance of macros like throughout your day without having to necessarily log your food.
Open up an app.
Exactly.
And start tracking it. Sure.
Exactly. So
that's cool. Yeah. As someone from like coming from the CrossFit scene, and and fitness is a huge part of my life, so macros has always been big to me.
Yeah.
But it's tough for me to like give someone advice, which I probably shouldn't be doing anyway, but be like, oh, like, how do I like, track my diet? I'm like, oh, macro. It's like, but not every, I would say probably most people aren't where I am at as far as like mentally with nutrition, as far as with nutrition, how it's all tied in. That's probably way too much for them.
It probably is for the average person. Probably is. Yeah. And it's interesting. Like even in my own personal experience, I've gone through phases with all different kinds of things related to my nutrition. And there was a period of time where I was using MyFitnessPal and logging my food and paying attention to my macros. Was it effective? Yes.
Yeah.
Was it sustainable for me? Not really. Because I the minute you go to a restaurant, I'm like, oh, how am I going to log this?
Crap.
And so, or you go to somebody's house for dinner, or you go to a party, or like just anything out of the ordinary, I found challenging to track in an app. So even for me, I think it's a good tool, but it's not necessarily the be all end all for most people.
Totally.
Yeah.
Sure. I think that's a good answer there. And I know you kind of touched on the like organic versus non-organic thing already with like the whole foods versus processed foods, which is kind of the same.
If you can buy organic and you can afford organic, I'm always for that. I think the less chemicals in your food, the better. So,
fair enough. Yeah. And then anything you're seeing right now, because I know there's always a new thing coming out on Instagram, Facebook, news, like certain like seed oils and like high fructose corn syrup, like anything you're like, oh, definitely stay away from this right now, or is it kind of like along the same sentiment of like try to eat whole foods?
Very similar response. Like try to eat mostly whole foods. If you're gonna indulge in something processed, it's likely gonna have some of those ingredients in it. Right. That's okay. Just don't make that a major part of your diet.
Sure.
I actually saw, I'm just going to mention this quickly.
Yeah.
I saw this video on Instagram the other day, and it was this woman kind of ranting about this topic of like, why are people so obsessed and like demonizing seed oils and sugar and all these things when like every night they're pouring poison down their throat with their nightly glass of wine.
Sure.
Like the alcohol thing, right? And so it's like just an interesting way to think about it.
Yeah.
With like, like everything in moderation, you know?
Right.
Like it's,
right.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, that's.
Like people don't want to talk about their drinks, but they'll talk about the seed oils and the sugars and all of that.
Yeah, the drinks, because it's like, it's almost, it would be considered like that fourth macro essentially, right? Is like you have protein, fats, and then or carbs, and then ethanol, which doesn't really contribute calories, but nothing else.
It's not. Yeah, it's like literal poison.
It's like it doesn't do anything for you.
I'm not gonna say I don't enjoy a glass of wine here and
there,
but
right. Same thing, balance.
Yeah, exactly.
We kind of touched upon this already, but water intake. Do you kind of have like a generalized recommendation for most people, or is it kind of vary person to person?
I mean, I think the general recommendation is at least 8 glasses a day for the average person. But I'll tailor the goal depending on the client. And some of the factors that I'll look at is like, where are they starting from? Right? Like some people literally don't drink any water. So I can't say like, all right, you got to drink 80 ounces today. Like that's not realistic. Right. So it depends. I want it to be an achievable goal. It depends on their activity level, right? Like if they're working out a lot, they need more water than somebody who's not. If it's summertime, you need more water than winter. Yeah. So
I was just the podcast. I just shot yesterday with a guy who's he's doing ultra marathons.
Oh yeah.
And he said that's his number one issue is that because he's running like 20, 30 miles a day.
Yeah.
And he's like, my number one issue is I just can't get enough
water.
And I'm drinking as much as possible. It's like I'm
it's
always
like
thirsty.
A full-time job.
So so it varies person to depending on what you're doing. Fruits and veggies. You have any like generalized recommendation for that, or strategies behind that?
So, from my perspective, most people aren't eating enough fruits and veggies, especially veggies. I think I think I mentioned the plate method maybe earlier. So I think that's a good guideline for people to think about. Is just if you think of a dinner plate, half of your plate ideally should be non-starchy veggies. Right. And if you can do that twice a day, that you're doing pretty good, I would say.
And by non-starchy, what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So non-starchy things like green beans or broccoli or versus a starchy veggie like a sweet potato.
Okay.
Right. That's more carbs.
Sure.
So I would consider that more like in the carb category.
Gotcha.
So spinach, like those kinds of things. Right.
Right. Yeah. You're kind of your standard like vegetables that most people are like, I don't want to eat vegetables.
Exactly. All right, here's a tip. Roast them. Anything roasted, in my opinion, tastes
so much better.
Delicious. Nice. Like throw a little olive oil, salt, and pepper, and roast them.
Very cool. All right, so as far as just general food questions, let me ask this question too, as far as like, because this kind of leads into that. Any fads that you're seeing right now that you're kind of like, I don't know if I would do that, or as far as like diets out there? Yeah,
I mean, it's, the standard stuff everybody hears about, the keto, intermittent fasting, paleo, all that good stuff. Like my philosophy is like, I don't think you should be cutting out entire food groups necessarily in most cases, unless there's a special situation.
Right.
And I think it should be sustainable long term. And so I think a lot of the fad diets are not sustainable because they tend to be quite restrictive. I'm not saying intermittent fasting isn't good for some people. It is, right? So I don't want to rule any of that out.
Right.
But it really depends on the person, their goals, and again, I just think sustainability is key. Otherwise, you get that yo-yo diet going on. Right. That's no good.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting too because you almost don't want to be like. Because restrictive diets in general are probably going to lead to like you're not going to be able to sustain that long term.
Exactly.
But I mean, some people, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, but I feel like some people like intermittent fasting, they seem to be able to like incorporate and it works well for the lifestyle, and it does maybe like fit with them or like a certain style of diet. But,
totally.
But maybe just like cautioning people, be like, hey, like what you're doing typically tends to long-term not work out.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it might work out for you. It's like
exactly. And I think intermittent fasting is a good example of maybe an exception because it does work well for some people, and it can be sustainable. But that's not eliminating entire food groups necessarily.
Sure. Yeah.
So, yeah.
No,
Totally. like depends on the person, depends on the goals.
Right.
But again, where I'm coming from in my philosophy and my coaching program, it's more like what's going to be sustainable for you.
Yeah.
And let's work toward that.
What's going to actually work long term. That's good.
Quick story I'll share. So back in my first CrossFit days, those were the days where CrossFit, it was like no grains, right? Do you remember that?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
No carbs, no grains. So
the food pyramid they had built out,
Yeah.
with the CrossFit food pyramid. Yeah.
And so my gym did a no grain challenge, they called it.
Okay.
Right? So for a month. And so we did no grains, like no carbs, and we did workouts where we would, we did a test and then a retest at the end of the month.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember. We did some sort of like body measurements too, like something crazy.
I wonder what the workout, how that was test went.
I don't even remember what it was. This was so long ago, but I crushed this. Like I won the challenge, right?
Yeah.
And I got great results. My retest of my workouts were so much better. Like I was lifting heavier. I remember being on like the assault bike and the coach was like, "Let's go." And I like crushed my time, whatever. But I felt awful. I just physically and emotionally awful. And I was not eating
totally
enough carbs. And it was such an interesting experiment.
It's especially for like any endurance sport. I mean, like obviously you can speak on this, but like carbs are super important for the energy source.
Yeah, for sure.
I've heard, I know there are keto endurance athletes out there, but as far as like the energy pathway goes, it's a less efficient energy pathway. Right. So it's the way your body is able to use that food as fuel. So
totally.
Cutting carbs for CrossFit is tough.
Yeah, it was such an interesting month.
That's good. All right, so a couple more questions here. We got. I know we talked about your specific exercise, what you like to do, and again, this is probably one of the things that depends. But anything from like a movement or exercise perspective that you have, like general guidelines for your clients, like when it comes to like strength training, cardio, like yoga, like that type of stuff.
Yeah. Again, depends on the person's goals. Typically, people are coming to me because they want to lose some weight. That's probably the most common thing.
Yeah.
And interestingly, I think people tend to think of cardio as the best form of exercise to lose weight.
Yeah.
I would argue it's strength training.
Yeah.
So and especially working with women, I think a lot of women tend to go straight to the cardio and not necessarily incorporate the strength training. And so I'll often have conversations around that and hope to get them in the gym and lifting some weights and that sort of thing, building muscle,
right?
Which is going to help their metabolism,
right,
and all of that good stuff. So, yeah, I'm a big proponent of strength training. The other thing I often will talk to people about is all the movement that's not your workout, right? Like
what do they call
it? The term NEAT.
NEAT. Yeah.
Let me see if I can get it. Non-exercise activity thermogenesis.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yes.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
I'll go with that.
So this concept has been so interesting for me as someone who works from home and like literally could go a day without leaving my house. Like I've really been thinking about this for myself a lot lately is like you have to move throughout the day.
Yeah.
And so getting outside, even just for a 10-minute walk here and there throughout the day makes a huge difference in, just like the calories you're burning just in your normal activities.
Sure.
I mean, even like just day-to-day stuff like gardening, doing your laundry, like running up and down the stairs to get your kids to bed. Like all of that stuff counts toward moving your body, right? As opposed to like, I think it's hard for people who have a job where they're sitting at a desk all day staring at a computer.
Yeah.
Like you really have to be conscious of that because you're actually not moving all day long.
Yeah. And from a PT side point, like their hip flexors get super tight, the hamstrings are tight, they get that forward, called the cocktail shrimp posture. Just like they just bent over with their hands like forward like this.
That's rough.
So yeah, from nutrition, fitness, and PT, like get some movement, especially if you're at home, like working from home. That's super clutch. Kelly Starrett, actually, are you familiar with Kelly Starrett?
No.
He's a PT. He's been in the CrossFit world for a while. he came out with a book called Becoming a Supple Leopard a while ago, and he just came out with another one.
I've heard that book.
Yeah.
I didn't know his name, but I've heard of that book. Yeah.
And he came out with another one just this year called Built to Move, and it talks about Becoming a Supple Leopard was more like mobility techniques for the athlete. Built to Move was more like, here are some like more like habits type stuff that people can do, mostly for movement, taking care of their body like during the day.
Right.
So he talks a lot about NEAT and like little tricks you can do like during the day.
Love
So
that.
yeah, that's a good way to do it. Cool. So and then next one we got we talked very, very briefly about this, but sleep. And I know this is something that's been a popular topic as of recent, but can make a profound effect just in general, weight loss, performance, recovery.
Totally. Yeah, sleep is so important. I actually got a Whoop.
Nice.
I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago. I resisted wearables for the longest time because I was afraid I would just get obsessed with the numbers and all of that. I feel like that's just easy to do.
Sure.
But I finally gave in. I'm like, I just want to see what's going on, right? And so I think the sleep data I get from this is so interesting.
Very cool.
And I try not to look at it first thing in the morning, and I try to assess how I feel, like when I wake up, and I'm like, all right, do I feel good? Do I feel tired? Like, how am I feeling? And then I compare it to like what my score looks like.
Right. Does it match up?
It usually does. Yeah. I'm like, I feel terrible. I'm in the red today. That makes sense, right?
Makes sense. Probably should go easy today.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, sleep is huge. I mean, sleep's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge for everything. But like from just recovering from your workouts, building muscle, all of those good things. But then from a nutrition perspective, sleep, also impacts your hormone levels, right?
Sure.
And so if you're not getting enough sleep or you're not getting good quality sleep, it can affect the hormones that impact your appetite and your satiety, right? And so you tend to eat more and you crave things if you're not getting good sleep. So it's just from a nutrition perspective, it's important as well.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I had the Whoop for a while too. I like it. I ended up switching to Garmin, which has a sleep tracker on it too, but the Whoop's data on sleep are a bit better.
Yeah.
They do a good job. Yeah. And then the last kind of piece we have here for some of these questions are, and you talked a lot about this already, but kind of the habits related to more like stress management type of stuff. So I don't know if you have any, and obviously like going along with sleep, like can affect weight gain and everything, performance. But any like stress management style like recommendations or techniques or tips that you have for people?
Yeah. I think, again, this is going to vary by person, but I think some general ideas, exercise is so helpful for stress management. So that's for sure one I would recommend. And it doesn't need to be even anything intense. I think going for that 10-minute walk can be a stress reliever, right?
Yeah.
So I think any form of exercise can be helpful. Yoga is huge for me. If you're into yoga, I would say do more of that, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you're going through a stressful period of time. There are different techniques. I've always been interested in getting into a meditation practice. I have not yet done it. But it's on my list of things, right? Like eventually I want to be a daily meditator, but every now and then when I'm really feeling like stressed out or anxious, I will stop myself, like whatever I'm doing, I will stop myself and I will sit for 10 minutes and try to meditate as best I can, because it is really helpful. Even just breathing, if you're in a moment and you're feeling really stressed out, just taking a minute to like sit, close your eyes and take some really deep breaths can be like it can completely change the trajectory of the situation in some cases. So like little techniques like that I think can be helpful too.
If you're ever looking for like a guided practice, Andrew Huberman have you heard of his name?
Yeah.
He just released might have been like 2 months ago now, a video on YouTube for like a guided. He doesn't call it meditation, which I think it makes it a little more like clickbaity,
approachable.
Or like interesting. Like he calls it something like sleep like repair for it's a meditation follow through, but like he says it's supposed to like help like regenerate you as if you were like getting like a little extra sleep or something like that throughout the day. But
Interesting.
if you look up, if you're looking for some different techniques, I tried it once. Like I had a day where I was like, oh, I need to just like take a time and break, and I use it. I'm like, oh, I like it's good. So if you're looking for something, I recommend that one. Check it out.
I'll check it out.
Because it can be helpful to have something guided.
For sure. I find that to be very helpful. So in yoga, right? Like sometimes I'll go to a guided meditation at my yoga studio, and it's beautiful. It's an awesome experience, and it's helpful because I think a lot of people can probably relate to this. If you've tried to meditate, it's hard to like
it's so
your
hard.
brain to relax a little bit.
It is.
It's challenging. And so, having that sort of external stimulus of someone talking you through something can be really helpful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that's why, like you said, like with, and yes, I think there is a difference. Like just like we talked about when we started was between like listening with your ears or your eyes for audiobook, is like, I think yoga and stuff is a form of meditation
for sure,
because you're clearing your mind of everything except for the task at hand. And I think about the same. I don't do as much anymore, but like jujitsu or like skiing or snowboarding, like or like surfing, any of those things, like you're clearing your mind except for your exercise, the task at hand. So it is almost like a form of meditation. But
totally.
But like that's kind of like the Audible book version maybe, and like the actual like the I think there are probably some distinct benefits from just like a pure meditation practice as well.
Yeah, I mean yoga. That's the whole point of it. It's clear it so you can really like sink into that meditative state. Yeah,
totally.
It's yoga's magic. I'm convinced.
I like it. I don't do it as much as I should, but I do like it. I'll have to check out Synergy.
Synergy's awesome. Yeah, you totally should. It's hot yoga there. So
I like hot yoga.
Yeah, I do too.
All right, so that pretty much wraps up most of my questions that were more specific when it came down to nutrition. So, so we'll just start our wrap up questions here. We're just about at the top of the hour, so I'll be respectful of your time. We'll get you out of here pretty soon. But so last few follow up wrap up questions. So we have anything in store for the future, anything coming up, anything that you're excited about, and then a follow up question to that. Drop your Instagram, socials, like anything you want to plug. And then the last question, which you have some time to think about, which is a favorite quote or mantra or favorite saying. And the way I describe this is in Rhode Island, if you're driving up Route 95 north on the highway, you have the big blue bug. Yeah. You have the Superman building, and then there's a billboard right after the big blue bug. There's one on the right side. I think it's usually like a Ross Simons or Providence Diamond, and the left side is usually like a lawyer like Rob Levine. Okay. So you get the Rob Levine one. Okay. Right behind the and it could say anything you want.
This feels like a lot of pressure.
Anything you want for the day. Only 24 hours. You can say anything you want. So it could be a saying or just something you want to say to your community, like something like that. Okay. But we'll get to that, so you have some time to think about it. So anything coming up? Anything in store for the future?
Yeah. So just business-wise, I'm excited. In January, I'm going to be offering a free challenge for folks, free 14-day challenge. I think January is a pretty popular time for people to be thinking about their health and wellness and so forth. So I'll be offering a free 14-day challenge. It's online, so it's not like you have to be local or anything, where we'll be kind of talking about some anchor behaviors and habits that can help set you up for success from a nutrition perspective. Nice. So that's coming up. I currently work one-on-one with clients, but the plan in 2024 is to launch some group coaching programs. Cool. So I don't have a specific time frame for that yet, but that's coming. So I'm excited for that.
Very cool.
Yeah, those are probably the two major things.
And then where can people find you?
Instagram's probably the easiest spot to point people to. So my Instagram is at thewellfed.project.
Cool. All right. And then, do you have any thoughts on that billboard?
Oh man, this is a really tough question.
Billboards are expensive too.
Oh,
I know
even more pressure.
My wife previously was working for a company that was doing a lot of like billboards in Rhode Island, and they can go for a couple grand for I think a month. I think maybe like I think it's between like $5 to $8 grand a month or something like that. I could be off on that number,
so
but
you need to have a decent marketing budget. For that.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh man, I love I love quotes.
Yeah.
Like, let me just say that. I love to read quotes and reflect on them, and I feel like they're such a great tool, even for meditation, right?
Yeah.
I suck at remembering them.
Same. Totally.
I'm so bad at remembering them. So maybe I'll offer you a thought.
Yes, I like it.
Maybe this isn't a fully fleshed out quote that makes it onto the billboard, but
That's all right.
it's an early idea.
Okay. It's in the design phase.
So it's in the design phase. And this kind of comes back to what we were just talking about. I want to say, like, close your eyes and take a few deep breaths.
That's awesome.
I just feel like life right now for a lot of people is just wild. I mean, people are so busy. The world is overwhelming.
Yeah.
There's so many things going on all the time, and
bridges are failing.
Oh, bridges are shutting down. I just think it's so important to kind of stop and just take a few deep breaths, like calm yourself down, reflect on what's important, see the bigger picture, and it just like helps you put things in perspective, you know?
That's great.
Yeah.
We'll have to quote your name on that if it hasn't been
no,
quoted
it's not
yet.
the full quote yet. We got to flush out the wording.
Oh,
but
okay.
Something along those lines.
I like it. Very cool. Awesome. Well, we'll wrap up with that.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for being on. It was a
so
blast.
fun.
And Roadie Strength, we're signing off.